there's an awful lot of things that if I was to read them now, I'd say, well, good God, I wish to God I hadn't said that.
From the public's perspective, Prince Philip appears as a loyal and resigned figure within the British royal family. However, the reality was far different. His attempts to assert his significance were thwarted by intense conflicts with the Queen Mother, who wielded significant power behind her daughter, Queen Elizabeth II. In the Queen Mother's eyes, Philip was her sworn enemy, and she did everything in her power to hinder his progress. To uncover more about this mysterious feud, don't miss our video. A few minutes ago, the documentary The Private Lives of the Windsors sheds light on the Queen Mother's strong disapproval of Prince Philip, whom she saw as a dangerously progressive figure. From the moment Philip entered the royal fold, the Queen Mother regarded him with suspicion and disfavor. She perceived him as a challenge to her authority as the matriarch of the family, a role she had fiercely protected since the abdication of her brother-in-law, King Edward VIII, and the subsequent ascent of her husband, King George VI, to the throne. Historian and biographer Professor Jane Ridley, who contributes to the documentary, paints a vivid picture of the tense dynamics within the royal family during those early years. The Queen Mother viewed him as rather an enemy, Ridley explains. In fact, one would see those early years as being a tug of war and a tussle for the ear of the Queen. This struggle for influence over Queen Elizabeth II defined much of the early relationship between Prince Philip and the Queen Mother. The Queen Mother's reservations about Philip predated his official entry into the British royal family. As a young man, Philip was seen as an outsider with a complex and somewhat controversial background. Born into the Greek and Danish royal families, his early life was marked by upheaval and displacement. His family's exile from Greece, his mother's struggle with mental health, and his education in Germany and Britain all contributed to a sense of him being a foreign element in the British court. Moreover, Philip's character and demeanor were starkly different from the traditions and expectations of the British royal family. He was outspoken, direct, and often irreverent, traits that clashed with the Queen Mother's more conservative and reserved approach. She viewed his progressive ideas and modernizing tendencies as threats to the established order and the continuity of royal traditions. Despite his distinguished lineage as a great-great-great-grandchild of Queen Victoria and Prince Albert, Prince Philip faced considerable disapproval from his in-laws. His lack of financial standing and status as a perceived foreigner did not endear him to the British royal family. Besides, Prince Philip's family history is steeped in the complex and often troubling politics of early 20th century Europe. His sister, Princess Cecile, married Georg Donatus, the Grand Duke of Hesse, a union that ultimately ended in tragedy. In 1937, both Cecile and Georg Donatus died in a plane crash, a devastating event that also claimed the lives of their two young sons and Cecile's mother-in-law. Adding a darker layer to this story, it is documented that both Cecile and Georg Donatus were members of the Nazi Party, a reflection of the political climate in Germany during that era. Princess Cecile was not alone in forging marital ties with German nobility. The post-World War I period saw Philip's family fractured by geopolitical upheaval. After their parents, Prince Andrew of Greece and Denmark and Princess Alice of Battenberg separated, Philip's sisters remained in Germany. This separation from their parents and relocation to Germany led all of Philip's sisters to marry into the German aristocracy. Princess Sophie, the youngest of Philip's sisters, married Prince Christoph of Hesse in 1930 when she was just 16 years old. Prince Christoph was not only a member of the Nazi Party but also served as an SS officer. Sophie's marriage into such a prominent Nazi-affiliated family underscores the intricate and often controversial affiliations of European nobility during this tumultuous period. In 1931, Princess Margareta, the eldest of Philip's sisters, married Prince Gottfried of Hohenlohe-Langenburg. The Hohenlohe-Langenburg family was another significant German noble house, adding to the interconnectedness of European royal families through marital alliances. That same year, Princess Theodora married her second cousin Berthold, Margrave of Baden. These marriages firmly rooted Philip's sisters in Germany, intertwining their fates with the shifting allegiances and political landscape of their adopted country. The wartime affiliations of Philip's sisters created significant complications for Philip himself, especially as he sought to forge his own path. His own connections to Germany, through his sisters' marriages, cast a long shadow over his early life and later his relationship with the British royal family. This historical baggage became particularly evident when Philip married Queen Elizabeth II in 1947. Given the recent end of World War II and the lingering animosities and grief it left in its wake, the decision was made not to invite any of Philip's sisters to his wedding. This exclusion was a stark reminder of the deep wounds that still needed to heal in post-war Europe. The British public, still reeling from the war and its aftermath, would have found the presence of German nobility at such a high-profile event deeply unsettling. Adding further controversy to Philip's German connections, there are photographs that have surfaced depicting a young Philip at the funeral of Princess Cecile. In these images, a 16-year-old Philip is seen surrounded by men performing Nazi salutes. These photos, while reflective of the era's political climate, have contributed to a complicated legacy regarding Philip's ties to Nazi Germany. Philip's introduction to the royal family was thus fraught with skepticism and prejudice. Despite his service in the British Royal Navy during the war, his familial ties cast a shadow over his suitability as a consort for the future queen. The British royal family, still reeling from the war, found it challenging to accept someone whose close relatives had connections to the enemy. The ascension of Elizabeth to the throne in 1952 further complicated matters. The Queen Mother, who had enjoyed the power and privileges of being the Queen Consort, found herself relegated to a less influential role. Royal biographer Christopher Warwick explains in the documentary, "With the death of King George, we have to remember how young they were. The king was 56, the Queen Mother was 51. So she felt they'd been cut off in her prime. She loved the position of being queen. And suddenly, all that was taken from her." This abrupt shift in roles left the Queen Mother feeling resentful and envious of her daughter's newfound power and status. Having cherished her position as Queen Consort, she struggled to adapt to her new role as the Queen Mother. The change was not just a loss of status, but also of the influence and authority she had wielded. The documentary reveals that she was deeply affected by this transition, feeling as though she had been unfairly sidelined. After the death of King George VI, the dynamics within the royal family underwent significant and often painful changes. The transition marked not only a shift in leadership, but also deep emotional and logistical upheaval for many members of the family, particularly the Queen Mother and Prince Philip. One of the most immediate and tangible changes was the Queen Mother's forced move out of Buckingham Palace to make way for the new queen, Elizabeth II, and her husband, Philip. This move was not just a change of residence, but a profound symbol of the end of an era and the beginning of another. Kinsey Schofield tells Nikki Swift that this displacement was heart-wrenching for the Queen Mother. It sent her into fits of sobbing, a rare display of vulnerability for a woman known for her stoicism and strength. Her emotional reaction was so intense that she later felt compelled to apologize to her daughter, Queen Elizabeth, for her breakdown. This apology highlights the deep sense of duty and decorum that the Queen Mother felt she needed to uphold, even in moments of personal grief and loss. Meanwhile, Prince Philip was also navigating his own set of challenges. As the new consort, he found himself at odds with the traditions and expectations of the royal household. Philip, a man of modern sensibilities and progressive ideas, sought to bring changes that he felt were necessary for the modernization and efficiency of the monarchy. However, his efforts were often met with resistance. One of his primary desires was for his family to adopt his surname, Mountbatten, which was met with significant pushback from Queen Elizabeth's family. This rejection was a sore point for Philip, who felt it symbolized his marginalization within the royal structure. Philip's frustrations extended to the daily operations and archaic customs within the palace. He found many of the palace staff's duties outdated and inefficient, which only added to his growing sense of alienation. Schofield explained that while Prince Philip faced many setbacks, or L's, he was fundamentally driven by a desire to be included and to contribute meaningfully to the monarchy. However, his ambitions were often perceived as troublesome rather than helpful, leading to further tension within the family. Adding to the complexities of this transition was the presence of Tommy Lascelles, the Queen Mother's private secretary, who had also served King George VI. Lascelles, a staunch traditionalist, viewed Philip with suspicion and often saw him as a troublemaker. His influence within the royal household likely compounded the challenges Philip faced as he attempted to assert his role and make his mark. The Queen Mother, for her part, struggled deeply with her new reality. Having been queen consort for many years, she found it difficult to adjust to her new, lesser status. In the hierarchical world of the royal family, the ascension of her daughter and son-in-law meant that they now took precedence over her. This reversal of roles was a hard pill for her to swallow, leading to a period of emotional and psychological adjustment. The conflict between the Queen Mother and Prince Philip was a significant aspect of the early years of Queen Elizabeth II's reign, particularly in their differing visions for the royal family and the upbringing of Prince Charles. The Queen Mother, rooted in tradition and old-fashioned approaches, often found herself at odds with Philip, who was seen as more progressive and modern in his outlook. This clash of ideologies created a persistent tension within the royal household, influencing various aspects of their lives and duties. One of the primary areas of contention was the education and upbringing of Prince Charles, the heir to the throne. Historian Piers Brendan highlights in the documentary how Prince Philip was determined to make a man of his firstborn son, but struggled to understand Charles, who was perceived as a wimp by his father. Philip's approach was shaped by his own experiences and his belief in the importance of resilience and toughness. He was an advocate for a rigorous, disciplined upbringing, believing that it would prepare Charles for the demanding role of a future king. Philip's vision for Charles's education was epitomized by his desire to send him to Gordonstoun, his own alma mater in Scotland. Gordonstoun was known for its austere and challenging environment, emphasizing physical endurance, self-reliance, and leadership skills. Philip believed that the school's rigorous curriculum and demanding lifestyle would instill the necessary qualities in Charles to be a strong and capable monarch. In stark contrast, the Queen Mother had a different vision for Charles's education, one that was more aligned with her nurturing and traditional values. She believed that what Charles needed was delicate nurturing, sympathy, and understanding. Her approach was informed by her own experiences and the more gentle upbringing she believed was appropriate for a young prince. The Queen Mother advocated for Charles to attend Eton, a prestigious school located just around the corner from her home at Windsors Royal Lodge. Experiencing many conflicts with his mother-in-law, Prince Philip gradually felt that royal life had become extremely stifling and inappropriate. Indeed, Prince Philip's life within the confines of the royal palace often seemed to chafe against his more adventurous and social nature. Before his marriage to Queen Elizabeth II, Philip had already cultivated a reputation for a colorful and somewhat rambunctious lifestyle, shaped in part by his naval career and the freedoms it afforded him. This spirit of adventure and socializing did not diminish upon his entry into royal life. Rather, it persisted, manifesting in a series of social engagements and connections that raised eyebrows within the palace walls. One significant figure in Philip's social circle was the society photographer Baron, known for his flamboyant personality and notorious philandering. Baron had captured the royal wedding in photographs and was considered for the prestigious task of creating the official coronation portrait alongside Cecil Beaton, who was a favorite of Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother. While Beaton exuded an elegant and camp persona, Baron epitomized a more rakish charm, prone to late nights and lively parties. Baron's lifestyle often required discreet interventions to rouse him from bed after nights of revelry with various female companions. His parties, which Prince Philip occasionally attended, were legendary for their unconventional mix of guests. Actors, newspaper editors, artists, and authors among them. The gatherings were marked by a lively atmosphere where social norms were sometimes pushed aside in favor of unbridled enjoyment and camaraderie. Among the notable figures who frequented Baron's gatherings were David Niven and Peter Ustinov, both distinguished actors known for their wit and charm. Kim Philby, the notorious double agent who later defected to the Soviet Union, and Stephen Ward, a central figure in the Profumo affair, also found themselves in the company of Philip and his friends. The eclectic mix of personalities and backgrounds provided a vibrant backdrop against which Philip could momentarily escape the formality and protocol of royal life. For Philip, these social engagements served as a release from the pressures and responsibilities of being part of the royal family. His ability to mix freely with such diverse and sometimes controversial characters highlighted his desire for a more relaxed and informal social environment, far removed from the decorum of palace life. Despite occasional disapproval from within royal circles about his choice of company, Philip found solace and amusement in these gatherings, where lively conversations and shared experiences forged bonds that transcended social status. Baron established a regular gathering known as the Thursday Club, a luncheon club that reflected a hedonistic approach to the week, where weekends for the fortunate began on Thursday. This club became a haven for individuals who embraced a lifestyle marked by relaxation, revelry, and a touch of irreverence. The Thursday Club was populated by an eclectic mix of characters, many of whom were considered faintly raffish and slightly disreputable by traditional standards. These individuals, who often occupied the fringes of respectable society, used the gatherings as an opportunity to let off steam. The atmosphere was one of conviviality and excess, where the participants likely indulged in a bit too much drink and shared off-color stories. It was a place where societal norms could be temporarily suspended, allowing the members to revel in a sense of freedom and camaraderie. Prince Philip found these gatherings to be a refreshing escape from the formality and duty that defined his public life. In the company of the Thursday Club members, he could relax, enjoy himself, and momentarily shed the constraints of his royal responsibilities. These socialite escapades offered him a reprieve, providing a stark contrast to the disciplined and duty-bound environment of Buckingham Palace. At home, however, Prince Philip's efforts at reform were often stymied, even by those he might have expected to support him. The dynamic within the royal household was complex and fraught with tension. Some marriages thrive on similarity, while others are sustained by the differences between partners. For Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip, their marriage was very much the latter. The Queen, a staunch traditionalist, followed in the footsteps of her father, King George VI. Her commitment to duty and obedience was unwavering, and she personified the sacrifice required to fulfill her royal role. This fundamental difference in disposition and outlook inevitably led to friction between the Queen and Prince Philip. While she embraced her role with a sense of solemn duty, Philip often found the constraints of royal life stifling. His desire to modernize and reform certain aspects of the monarchy clashed with the Queen's adherence to tradition. This tension was exacerbated by the presence of the formidable Queen Mother within the palace walls. Maybe you don't know, but despite requests to leave Buckingham Palace, the Queen Mother remained, leading to a unique and somewhat tense living arrangement. Renowned photographer Cecil Beaton visited her during this period and noted that the palace's atmosphere seemed deliberately uncomfortable. He speculated that the heating had been turned off to encourage her departure. Higher-ranking palace servants were puzzled by her prolonged stay, as it defied the expected norms of royal protocol. Passing by her old rooms, one would find bare walls, missing furniture, and a bitter cold, reflecting the subtle pressures she faced. Despite these less-than-hospitable conditions, the Queen Mother clung to her home and her role within the monarchy. Her determination to remain active in public life was bolstered by her ally, Winston Churchill. The wartime Prime Minister, known for his deep respect and admiration for the Queen Mother, encouraged her to continue her public duties. She welcomed this encouragement and took on her responsibilities with enthusiasm. Traditionally, a dowager queen would retreat into a more subdued and private existence, but Elizabeth was not one to fade into the background. At 52, she was far from ready to retire. Instead, she resumed her royal duties, although she had to adjust to playing a secondary role to her daughter. This transition was symbolically marked by the commissioning of a dispatch box for her use, a potent symbol of her continued involvement in state affairs. Remarkably, she was appointed a Councillor of State, making her the first Dowager Queen in British history to hold such a position. As for Prince Philip, it seems that he is very dissatisfied with his position and limited powers compared to the Queen Mother. Reportedly, the coronation of Queen Elizabeth II in 1953 was poised to be the most significant royal event of the 20th century, and Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, was determined to ensure its success. Embracing the task with his characteristic enthusiasm and vigor, Philip took an active role in the organization, demonstrating his forward-thinking and dynamic approach to royal duties. Philip's responsibilities included overseeing the arrangements for the multitude of Commonwealth troops coming to the United Kingdom for the coronation. These troops were stationed across the country, representing the far-reaching influence of the British Empire and the Commonwealth. As chairman of the Coronation Commission, Philip believed it was crucial to personally visit and inspect these troops, ensuring everything was in order. To tackle this logistical challenge, Philip enlisted the help of his private secretary, Mike Parker. Together, they pored over maps and plotted the locations of the various military units. The solution they devised was both ambitious and modern. They would use a helicopter to visit the troops. This method, they concluded, would be the most efficient and dynamic way to cover the vast distances involved. Philip's connection to the Royal Navy facilitated the procurement of a helicopter. With the aircraft secured, Philip and Parker embarked on their tour, visiting Commonwealth troops and ensuring the preparations for the coronation were proceeding smoothly. However, their innovative approach did not sit well with the traditionalists within the British establishment. Winston Churchill, the venerable Prime Minister, was particularly incensed by Philip's use of a helicopter. Churchill, a man of the old guard who had participated in the last cavalry charge in British history, viewed helicopters as a dangerous modern invention. To him, the idea of a member of the royal family flying around in one was reckless. He expressed his frustration directly, questioning whether Prince Philip was attempting to endanger the royal family with such daring actions. Churchill's ire extended beyond mere disapproval. He summoned Mike Parker to 10 Downing Street, where Parker received a severe reprimand. The Prime Minister lambasted Parker for bypassing the established bureaucratic procedures and for failing to seek the necessary permissions for the helicopter tour. This incident highlighted the tension between Philip's progressive methods and the entrenched traditionalism of figures like Churchill. Despite the backlash, Philip's efforts demonstrated his commitment to modernization and efficiency within the royal framework. His willingness to embrace new technologies and methods was emblematic of his broader vision for a modern monarchy. However, despite Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh's enthusiasm and active involvement in the organization, it soon became apparent that he wielded little real power. This was a significant challenge for Philip, who was used to taking the lead and making decisive actions, a characteristic that had served him well during his naval career. However, within the strict hierarchy of the British monarchy, tradition often overshadowed modern inclinations. The responsibility for organizing the coronation was ostensibly shared, but the real authority rested with the Duke of Norfolk, who held the hereditary title of Chief Butler of all England. This position granted him the traditional role of overseeing major state ceremonies, including coronations. As deputy chairman of the Coronation Commission, the Duke of Norfolk was the ultimate decision-maker, ensuring that age-old traditions were upheld and that the event proceeded with the gravitas and decorum expected of a royal coronation. The Duke of Norfolk's influence meant that Prince Philip's ideas and suggestions were often sidelined. Despite his official title, Philip found himself in a largely ceremonial role, a figurehead without substantial control. This realization was a source of frustration for the Duke of Edinburgh, who was accustomed to a more hands-on and authoritative approach. One of the most significant challenges Philip faced was the introduction of television. In the early 1950s, television was still a relatively new and rapidly evolving medium. It had never played a role in previous coronations, which were private ceremonies witnessed by only a select few within Westminster Abbey. The question of whether to televise the coronation was a contentious one, dividing opinion within the royal family and the broader establishment. Philip saw the potential of television to democratize the monarchy. He understood that broadcasting the coronation could bring the royal family closer to the people, allowing millions of ordinary citizens to witness this grand event. This was in line with his broader vision of a modern, accessible monarchy that embraced contemporary technologies and methods of communication. However, there was significant resistance to this idea. Many within the royal circle, including senior courtiers and traditionalists, feared that televising the coronation would undermine the dignity and mystique of the ceremony. They worried that the presence of cameras would disrupt the solemnity of the event, and that the monarchy's aura of majesty would be diminished by the intrusion of the public gaze. The Duke of Norfolk, with his deep-seated commitment to tradition, was among those who harbored reservations about the inclusion of television. He and others like him believed that the sanctity of the coronation should be preserved, and that exposing it to the scrutiny of television could erode the reverence in which it was held. Despite these concerns, Philip persisted. He argued passionately for the benefits of televising the coronation, emphasizing the importance of embracing modernity and connecting with the public. He saw this as an opportunity to showcase the monarchy in a new light, highlighting its relevance and significance in a rapidly changing world. The debate over televising the coronation reached a critical point, with both sides presenting compelling arguments. Ultimately, it was Queen Elizabeth II who made the final decision. Recognizing the potential for television to engage and unite the nation, she agreed to have the ceremony broadcast live. It can be seen that Prince Philip's efforts to assert his position in the royal family are extremely difficult, the only reason being the existence of the Queen Mother. Fortunately, many people took Philip's side. They attributed the conflict between Prince Philip and the Queen Mother to her selfish and domineering behavior. To shed light on this, let's delve into the Queen Mother's toxic relationships with other royals. First, the Queen Mother helped organize King Edward's exile, an act that made her the cruelest woman in the royal family. In 1936, King Edward VIII's shocking decision to abdicate the throne reverberated throughout Britain and the world. Edward's abdication was driven by his desire to marry Wallis Simpson, an American divorcee, a choice that sparked a constitutional crisis and drew widespread controversy. In a historic radio broadcast on the BBC, Edward addressed the nation, stating, "A few hours ago, I discharged my last duty as king and emperor. And now that I have been succeeded by my brother, the Duke of York, my first words must be to declare my allegiance to him. This I do with all my heart, With these words, Edward officially stepped down, and his brother, the Duke of York, ascended the throne as King George VI. King George VI, born Albert Frederick Arthur George, was thrust into a role for which he had never been prepared. Despite his initial reluctance, George VI's reign would eventually be marked by his steady leadership during World War II and his efforts to restore the reputation of the British monarchy. However, the transition of power did not come without significant personal and political turmoil, especially for his wife, Elizabeth, who became the Queen Consort. Elizabeth, known later as the Queen Mother, harbored strong feelings about Edward and Wallace. She was deeply concerned about the implications of Edward's abdication for the monarchy's stability and legitimacy. In her eyes, Wallis Simpson represented everything that was wrong and scandalous, not only because of her status as a twice-divorced woman, but also due to her perceived unsuitability to be a part of the royal family. In a letter to her mother-in-law, Queen Mary, Queen Mother referred to Wallis as a naughty lady, a reflection of her disdain and disapproval. The abdication scandal also presented a significant challenge to the public's perception of the monarchy. The royal family was meant to embody stability, tradition, and moral integrity. Edward's decision to prioritize his personal desires over his royal duties was seen as a betrayal of these values. Queen Mother, understanding the delicate nature of public opinion, was determined to protect the monarchy from further damage. She believed that Edward and Wallis's continued presence in Britain would be a constant reminder of the scandal and could undermine the authority and legitimacy of King George VI. This belief was succinctly expressed by Queen Mother in a conversation with royal biographer Philip Ziegler. When asked why she had sent Edward and Wallis into exile, she responded, "You can't have two kings, can you?" Her concern was not just about the practical implications of having two former monarchs living in the same country, but also about the symbolic threat it posed. The existence of a second king, even a former one, could create confusion and division, potentially leading to questions about the true locus of royal authority. Thus, Queen Mother took decisive action to ensure that Edward and Wallis would not interfere with the new reign. The couple was effectively exiled, living much of their lives abroad, mainly in France. This exile was not just a physical separation, but also a strategic move to distance the scandal from the heart of the British Empire. By removing Edward and Wallis from the public eye, Queen Mother aimed to safeguard her husband's reign and re-establish the monarchy's credibility. The exile of Edward and Wallis, while necessary from Queen Mother's perspective, also had personal dimensions. Queen Mother's disapproval of Wallis was well known, and there was a deep-seated personal animosity between the two women. This animosity was fueled by Queen Mother's belief that Wallis had led Edward astray, causing the abdication and subsequent crisis. During the 1930s, Queen Mother went to great lengths to ensure that Wallis Simpson, the woman who had played a central role in King Edward VIII's abdication, was not only exiled, but also socially ostracized. Queen Mother's actions were driven by a deep personal animosity towards Wallis and a fierce determination to protect the integrity and stability of the British monarchy. Queen Mother's efforts to exile Wallis extended beyond merely removing her from the country. She actively dissuaded members of the British aristocracy from attending Wallis and Edward's wedding. In the documentary Queen Mum, the Reluctant Queen, royal expert Jane Ridley revealed that Edward had expected the royal family and the upper echelons of British society to attend his wedding. However, Queen Mother's influence ensured that this did not happen. She believed that it would be inappropriate for the king to show any approval towards his brother's controversial marriage. Consequently, the wedding, which took place in Tours, France, was a starkly underattended affair, with no more than 24 guests present. This absence of support from Edward's family and peers was a significant snub orchestrated by Queen Mother, highlighting her disapproval and her power within the royal circles. In addition to orchestrating the social snub at the wedding, Queen Mother took another decisive step to humiliate Wallis. she denied her the title of Her Royal Highness, HRH. At the time, this was a particularly humiliating blow. The HRH title conferred a certain level of respect and protocol within royal circles, including the requirement for others to curtsy to the title holder. By denying Wallis this title, Queen Mother ensured that Wallis would not receive the customary deference and respect in England. Royal historian Piers Brendan, speaking in the documentary The Royal Wives of Windsor, elaborated on the significance of this decision. He explained that Queen Mother's denial of the HRH title was rooted in her belief that Wallis was responsible for the trauma her husband, George VI, had endured upon being thrust into the role of king. George VI had not been prepared for kingship, and the abdication had forced him into a position of immense responsibility and pressure. Queen Mother's resentment towards Wallis was deep-seated, and she carried a long-standing vendetta against her and Edward as a result. This vendetta manifested most clearly in Queen Mother's refusal to grant Wallis the HRH title. Depriving Wallis of this recognition was a way for Queen Mother to exert her influence and underscore her disapproval. It was a symbolic act that communicated Queen Mother's continued resentment and her desire to maintain the dignity of the monarchy by not legitimizing Wallis's position within it. Throughout the years following the abdication, Queen Mother's attitude towards Edward and Wallis remained unwaveringly cold and unforgiving. Despite their attempts to reconcile with the royal family, particularly in the later years of their lives, Queen Mother resisted any notion of reconciliation. This stance was palpable even in private conversations, as recalled by royal correspondent Michael Thornton in the Daily Mail. During a conversation with Edward and Wallis in Paris in 1971, Edward confided in Thornton about his views on Queen Mother. He described her as possessing charm, but also characterized her as shrewd, scheming, and ruthlessly determined. Edward's comments revealed a sense of resignation and acknowledgement of the barriers Queen Mother had imposed on their lives. Wallis, equally candid with Thornton, expressed her deep longing to return to England, the land of Edward's birth. However, she lamented that this dream remained forever out of reach due to Queen Mother's steadfast refusal to forgive them. According to Wallis, they were perpetually blocked from returning, a decision she attributed solely to Queen Mother's influence and reluctance to grant absolution. "We were never allowed to go back, and we never will be allowed. Not until the day we die," Wallis reportedly confided to Thornton. She expressed a hope that perhaps, after their deaths, Queen Mother might finally extend forgiveness. The bitterness of their exile and the ongoing refusal of forgiveness weighed heavily on Edward and Wallis throughout their lives. Their desire to return to England, to be accepted back into the fold of the royal family, was a persistent theme in their conversations with friends and confidants. Yet, Queen Mother's unyielding stance ensured that this reconciliation never came to pass during her reign as Queen Mother. It was only after both Edward and Wallis had passed away that a semblance of forgiveness was extended by Queen Mother's daughter, Queen Elizabeth II. In a gesture that marked a departure from her mother's stance, Queen Elizabeth II permitted Edward and Wallis to be buried in the royal burial ground. However, this gesture was not without its caveats. Edward and Wallis were laid to rest far away from the main graves, symbolically maintaining a distance even in death. During her tenure as Queen Consort, Queen Mother wielded significant influence within the royal household, impacting not only her husband, but also the broader political and social dynamics of the time. Her relationship with George VI was marked by a deep and enduring partnership, where her influence often shaped his decisions and policies. Queen Mother's sway over George VI was notable, as recounted by historian Kenneth Rose in William Shawcross's book, Queen Elizabeth, the official biography of the Queen Mother. According to Rose, George would often discuss matters with his private secretary, Sir Alan Lascelles, and give instructions, only to reconsider and change his mind the next day. A change often attributed to Queen Mother's persuasive influence. This dynamic reflected Queen Mother's ability to influence her husband's decisions, suggesting a close collaboration where she could effectively advocate for her viewpoints and preferences. Part of Queen Mother's influence stemmed from her personality and character. While George VI was known for his reserved and gentle demeanor, Queen Mother was renowned for her strong-willed and determined nature. Royal expert Piers Brendan, speaking in the documentary The Royal House of Windsor, described Queen Mother as providing the backbone that George sometimes lacked. Her assertiveness and decisiveness complemented George's more hesitant approach, allowing her to play a crucial role in guiding his decisions, especially during politically sensitive times. Politically, Queen Mother was identified as a staunch, right-wing conservative, a position she held throughout her life. Over the years, she successfully influenced George VI to adopt more conservative viewpoints, aligning his political leanings with her own. This alignment was significant in shaping the policies and positions adopted by the monarchy during George VI's reign, reflecting Queen Mother's active role in political discussions and decision-making processes. Ba fan joy chuyen tin lang man kua kong chua, Margaret Voy Peter Townsend. In 1955, Queen Mother found herself once again embroiled in familial drama as her younger daughter, Princess Margaret, faced a love affair that threatened to rival the scandal of King Edward VIII's abdication. Margaret's romantic entanglement was with Captain Peter Townsend, a dashing war hero and a divorcee, factors that stirred controversy within the royal family and British society. Similar to Edward's situation decades earlier, Princess Margaret confronted a pivotal choice: marry Townsend and forfeit her royal titles and privileges, or end the relationship to preserve her position within the monarchy. Despite Margaret's deep affection for Townsend, her loyalty to the crown ultimately prevailed, and she reluctantly decided to part ways with him. This decision was undoubtedly difficult for Margaret, who cherished her independence and the freedom to choose her own path. Throughout this emotional ordeal, the Queen Mother maintained a complex stance. She was deeply concerned about the implications of Margaret's relationship with Townsend, fearing it would destabilize the monarchy and attract public disapproval, akin to the fallout from Edward's abdication. Despite her maternal instincts, Queen Mother could not fully shield Margaret from the consequences of her romantic choices. One poignant moment that underscored the strained relationship between mother and daughter occurred after Margaret had made her decision to break off her relationship with Townsend. According to Hugo Vickers's biography, Elizabeth, the Queen Mother. Queen Mother was absent from Clarence House when Margaret returned home following a final meeting with Townsend. Instead of comforting her daughter during this crucial moment, the Queen Mother proceeded with her scheduled evening engagement, leaving Margaret to have dinner alone on a tray, a symbolic gesture of the emotional distance between them. This incident, while perhaps unintentional, highlighted the tension and sometimes cold distance in their relationship. Princess Margaret, known for her fiery temperament and strong-willed nature, often clashed with her mother over various issues, adding to the familial discord within the royal household. Anne Glenconner, Margaret's friend and confidant, detailed these tensions in her memoir, Lady-in-Waiting, recounting frequent bouts of bickering between the Queen Mother and Princess Margaret. In addition, Queen Mother also tried to influence King Charles's relationship with Diana. Throughout her life, Elizabeth took her responsibilities to the monarchy seriously. She understood the importance of maintaining dignity, tradition, and stability within the royal family. Therefore, it's no surprise that she viewed Princess Diana's public revelations about her troubled marriage to Prince Charles with concern and dismay. Diana's openness about her struggles and the media frenzy surrounding their divorce was, in Elizabeth's eyes, damaging to the institution of the monarchy, undoing years of effort to rebuild public trust after the trauma of Edward's abdication. In the documentary, The Queen Mother, Grandmother to the Nation, royal expert Jenny Bond highlighted Elizabeth's perspective, noting that the scandal surrounding Diana and Charles was particularly painful for her. Bond emphasized that Queen Mother and King George VI had played pivotal roles in resurrecting the image of the monarchy, making the unraveling of that image especially difficult to witness. Tom Quinn, another royal expert featured in the documentary, offered insights into Elizabeth's approach to Diana's marital troubles. He suggested that Queen Mother believed Diana had an idealistic, fairy tale view of marriage and relationships. Elizabeth reportedly felt impatient with Diana's challenges in adjusting to the realities of royal life, including the complexities introduced by Charles's relationship with Camilla Parker Bowles. Elizabeth's perspective was rooted in a traditional understanding of marriage and duty within the royal family, where personal happiness sometimes took a back seat to broader considerations of stability and continuity. However, not everyone in the royal family shared Elizabeth's viewpoint. According to Quinn, there were members of the royal household who viewed Elizabeth's interventions as meddling and interference in private matters. The dynamics between Diana, Charles, and Camilla were deeply personal and complex, intertwined with public expectations and the evolving role of the monarchy in modern society. Open discussions about relationships and alternative arrangements were becoming more accepted outside royal circles, but posed challenges within the institution. 11 for Queen Mother, the issue was not merely about Diana and Charles's private lives, but about the impact their public struggles could have on the monarchy as a whole. She believed in the importance of maintaining a united front and projecting an image of stability and continuity to the British public. Elizabeth's efforts to persuade Diana and Charles to reconcile were driven by a desire to protect the institution she had worked so hard to support, despite the changing social norms and expectations of the time. When it came to his relationship with Princess Diana, King Charles III was, ultimately, unable to take Queen Mother's advice. On August 28, 1996, Charles and Diana were officially divorced. Following the couple's separation, the Queen Mother played an integral role in isolating Diana from the rest of the royal family. In his book, Diana, Her True Story in Her Own Words, via Good to Know, royal biographer Andrew Morton revealed that Queen Mother and Diana had a strained relationship. The biography reportedly quoted an anonymous insider who said, "The Queen Mother drives a wedge between Diana and the others. As a result, Diana makes every excuse to avoid her." The tension between Diana and Queen Mother was not just a result of personal dislike. It was emblematic of a deeper conflict over the future direction of the monarchy. Diana's approach to royal duties, characterized by her openness and emotional candor, clashed with Queen Mother's more reserved and traditional stance. Queen Mother's influence over her grandson Charles played a significant role in the post-divorce dynamics within the royal family. Morton noted that the Queen Mother, unfavorably predisposed to Diana and her mother, exercises an enormous influence over the Prince of Wales. This influence manifested in Charles's increasing distance from Diana and the broader royal circle's efforts to marginalize her. In practical terms, this meant that after the divorce, the elder Queen Mother did not want to hear Diana's name in her presence. Colin Burgess, the Queen Mother's former equerry, told the Daily Mail, "Once Diana split from Charles, she was very much persona non grata, and I never again heard her name mentioned by or in front of the Queen Mum, not even when I saw her a couple of months after Diana's death." This complete erasure of Diana from conversations within the royal family highlights the extent to which Queen Mother sought to protect the monarchy from what she perceived as Diana's disruptive influence. Queen Mother's animosity towards Diana was also rooted in her perception of Diana's mother, Frances Shand Kidd. The Queen Mother had long harbored negative feelings towards Frances, which only compounded her distrust and dislike of Diana. This personal vendetta further fueled Queen Mother's efforts to isolate Diana and maintain the traditional values and image of the monarchy. The Queen Mother's approach to Diana's situation was consistent with her broader strategy of managing royal crises through control and exclusion. Throughout her life, Queen Mother demonstrated a keen understanding of the importance of public perception and the need to present a united front. She had previously used similar tactics to deal with other scandals and conflicts within the royal family, including her efforts to exile Edward VIII and Wallis Simpson after the abdication crisis. In each case, Queen Mother's priority was to protect the monarchy's reputation and ensure its stability, even if it meant making difficult and unpopular decisions. However, the exclusion of Diana had significant repercussions. Diana remained a beloved figure in the eyes of the public, and her isolation only increased her sympathy among the masses. The Queen Mother's strategy of marginalizing Diana may have succeeded within the confines of the royal household, but it did little to diminish Diana's influence and legacy outside the palace walls. The strained relationship between Queen Mother and Diana also had a lasting impact on Charles. The Prince of Wales found himself caught between his grandmother's traditionalist views and his ex-wife's modern approach to royalty. This tension contributed to Charles's own struggles with public perception and his role within the monarchy. The Queen Mother's influence over Charles, while significant, ultimately could not reconcile the divergent paths that he and Diana had taken. While Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, didn't love Princess Diana, she adored Prince Andrew's wife, Sarah Ferguson. Even after Sarah and Andrew parted ways in 1992, the two maintained a close friendship. As recently as 2023, Sarah and Andrew continued to live together. The couple also purchased a Swiss ski chalet together in 2014, more than 2 decades following their separation, although they put it on the market again in 2020. Although this arrangement was unusual, the elder Elizabeth supported it wholeheartedly. According to her equerry Major Colin Burgess, the reason was that Elizabeth was somewhat of a romantic. Speaking to the Daily Mail, Burgess divulged, Andrew and his wife, Sarah Ferguson, had announced their separation, but they kept seeing each other on and off for ages afterward. And I remember the Queen Mum sighing and saying to me, "You know, Andrew does love her so." Apparently, Elizabeth was not concerned with how royal Sarah seemed or whether she followed protocol. All she cared about was her grandson's happiness. As Burgess told the outlet, you could see that regardless of everything Sarah Ferguson had done, despite all the shame she had brought on the royals with her gaffes, the Queen Mother was still quite fond of her because of the joy she brought to Andrew. This sentiment from the Queen Mother towards Sarah Ferguson was quite telling, especially considering her more critical stance on other family members' partners. Sarah Ferguson, affectionately known as Fergie, was known for her vivacious personality and frequent missteps in the public eye, which often brought embarrassment to the royal family. Despite these gaffes, the Queen Mother's affection for Fergie never wavered. Fergie's public faux pas, such as her infamous toe-sucking scandal and numerous other media mishaps, would typically have been enough to permanently tarnish her reputation within royal circles. However, the Queen Mother's unwavering support for Fergie showcased her softer, more understanding side, especially when it came to her grandchildren's happiness. Her ability to look past Sarah's indiscretions and focus on the positive influence she had on Andrew highlighted the Queen Mother's more personal and less formal approach to family matters. The Queen Mother's leniency towards Fergie contrasted sharply with her stricter attitude towards Princess Diana. Diana, despite her immense popularity with the public, was often viewed as a disruptive force within the monarchy due to her candidness about her personal struggles and her strained relationship with Charles. The Queen Mother's inability to connect with Diana and her subsequent efforts to marginalize her reflected her commitment to traditional royal protocols and image preservation, something she was less concerned about when it came to Fergie. The relationship between the Queen Mother and Fergie also speaks volumes about the former's priorities and values. While she was undoubtedly a guardian of the monarchy's traditions and image, she also placed significant importance on personal happiness and romantic loyalty. Her support for Andrew and Fergie's unconventional relationship demonstrated her belief in love and companionship over rigid adherence to royal decorum. This duality in the Queen Mother's character, as both a staunch traditionalist and a romantic at heart, was further evident in her reaction to Andrew and Sarah's ongoing relationship even after their official separation. Their continued closeness and the decision to live together years after their divorce were highly unconventional by royal standards. Yet the Queen Mother's approval and support of this arrangement underscored her belief in the enduring power of love and her desire to see her grandson happy. Besides, Queen Mother is said to have created Prince Harry's spare complex. In his book, Spare, Prince Harry delves into the complexities and challenges of growing up as the younger brother of Prince William. The disparity in their upbringing was palpable from the start, accentuating Harry's sense of being the less significant sibling. William, as the heir to the throne, was given a large bedroom with a double bed and a mirrored wardrobe, a setup that underscored his primacy. In stark contrast, Harry was allocated a smaller room with more modest decorations, a physical manifestation of his secondary status. Harry's reflections in Spare poignantly capture the emotional impact of these differences. He describes himself as the shadow, the support, the plan B, articulating the deep-seated belief that his primary role was to serve as a backup in case anything happened to William. This sentiment is encapsulated in his poignant words, "I was brought into the world in case something happened to Willie," via the New York Post. The favoritism William experienced and the consequent feelings of inadequacy and insignificance profoundly affected Harry's sense of self-worth. Adding to Harry's sense of marginalization was the behavior of Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother. According to royal biographer Angela Levin, speaking in the documentary Prince Harry the Troubled Prince, the Queen Mother played a significant role in reinforcing Harry's complex over being the second-born. Levin recounts how the Queen Mother would often invite Prince William over for tea, engaging him in discussions about his future, while Harry was left out of these intimate gatherings. This exclusion extended to seating arrangements at family events, where Richard Kay, a longtime friend of Princess Diana, noted that the Queen Mother always ensured Prince William was seated prominently next to her, leaving Harry to feel even more sidelined, via Newsweek. What do you think about the feud between Prince Philip and the Queen Mother and her negative impact on the royal family? Leave us your comments in the section below. We hope you have found this helpful video. Don't forget to leave a like, share, and subscribe to the channel if you like it. Thank you for watching this and see you in the next videos. Goodbye.